You're tuned into That's Life, where we celebrate the beauty, the chaos, and the wonder of real life. Sometimes it makes you laugh, sometimes it makes you cry, but it always makes you feel. Settle in. We're just getting started. Sarah carefully arranged the golden brown cinnamon buns on a tray. For a moment, she thought about wrapping each one in a separate bag, but she immediately dismissed the idea. They'd be snapped up in no time anyway, and packaging would make them lose their appetizing look. Better to let them lie there, tempting. Brought your supermarket pastries, I see. A snide voice drawled from behind her, and Sarah involuntarily flinched. Good heavens, Val! Why do you sneak up on me like that? It's like you're trying to scare me on purpose. Her colleague Valerie snorted. Well, how else? What if you're up to something back here? I need blackmail material, just in case. Sarah frowned. Honestly, Val, you're incorrigible. Val placed a hand on her shoulder. Oh, come on, it was just a joke. I just blurted it out without thinking. And I'm not sneaking. I just have quiet footsteps. As if you didn't know. Sarah chose not to reply. She knew Valerie too well to be surprised by her antics. Sarah had often noticed her cheating customers, shortchanging them on weight, forgetting to give the correct change, or not putting everything in the bag. Val was cunning, unerringly spotting who she could trick and who wasn't worth the trouble. She had an astonishing nose for victims. Of course, Sarah didn't reveal what she saw to anyone, not even the owner. Gossiping and snitching went against her nature. Valerie, on the other hand, loved intrigue. 6 months ago, another saleswoman was fired thanks to her. Val had set her up, whispering all sorts of tall tales to the owner. That's why Sarah was sure. If Val found even the slightest hint that could damage Sarah's reputation, she would definitely use it. But Sarah was beyond reproach. No secret stashing of products, no dishonesty with customers. She had a warm relationship with the owner, David. From the moment she started, he had shown her special care, almost like a daughter. That's why he allowed her to sell her buns, so she could improve her financial situation. Perhaps this was what caused Valerie's envy, pushing her to look for dirt. However, simply slandering her was impossible. David trusted Sarah too much to take someone's word for it. Solid proof was needed. Why so quiet today? I've asked you something a couple of times already, Val said. Oh, was there something? Sarah snapped back to attention. I said you don't look well today. Didn't sleep, I bet. Was your gentleman caller keeping you up? Val asked with a smile. Sarah frowned and replied irritably. What gentleman caller? Val, you're starting to annoy me. There's no one. You know I don't have time for a personal life. Val casually adjusted her hair, took out a compact mirror, touched up her lipstick, and snapped it shut. She continued with emphasis. And it's a shame you don't have a man. How long has it been since your husband left you? 5 years at least? 6 years have passed, Sarah replied dully. How can you go without a man for so long, Sarah? You should have a line of admirers by now, but you're still alone, struggling. If only you had a husband. But look at me. After a wild night with my husband, I'm just glowing. And look at yourself. Pale as a ghost, dark circles under your eyes. If you hadn't slept because of a man, you'd look different. Your lonely bed will wear you down completely soon. Are you out of your mind, Val? What men? My daughter is sick. I was with her all night. The cough is terrible. Nothing helps. And you with your romantic affairs, I'm happy for you, but I'm not in the mood. Val pouted indignantly and turned away, busying herself with her own tasks. She was trying to needle Sarah to provoke envy, to show her superiority in her personal life. It infuriated her that Sarah didn't fall for her provocations. And Sarah thought how wonderful it would be if all the bonds sold today. Then she could take the money and go straight to the pharmacy to buy medicine for Alice. Several hours of the shift passed. The bonds sold quickly. Only a couple were left. Valerie didn't hide her envy, watching the satisfied Sarah. The cinnamon buns had become a real hit, popular with customers. Many asked when those specific buns would be available again. They were snapped up instantly. Sarah felt a pleasant thrill. With David's permission, she brought her baked goods 3 times a week. By evening, usually nothing was left. Finally, there were no buns left. Sarah counted out the due amount from the till, made a note in the thick notebook under the counter, and put the money in her pocket. What's going on here? Turn out your pockets, hands on the counter. Sarah flinched, then laughed with relief. David, you too. The owner shook his head with slight sadness. Sarah, you've been so on edge and exhausted lately. Is something wrong? No, it's the same as always. Alice is coughing badly again. I don't know what to do. I just took the money for the buns. I'll go to the pharmacy and buy some medicine. I really hope it helps. David looked closely at her tired face. He genuinely felt sorry for her. She took care of everyone, but no one took care of her. So many worries had fallen on her fragile shoulders that it seemed she would break under the weight. But she stubbornly rejected any help he offered sincerely without any ulterior motive. She didn't want to feel obligated. And all because of her cursed ex-husband. He had instilled in her, when she was on maternity leave, that she owed him everything. She was obligated to stay with the child, silently do all the housework and grocery shopping, carry heavy bags, meekly endure insults, patiently wait for his late-night escapades with who knows whom and where, and then, of course, put him to bed drunk. She had to forget about herself as a person, and even more so as a woman. He had turned her into a frightened shadow, afraid to utter a sound. David was sure that all this had affected their daughter, making her so weak and sickly. Of course, Sarah, go home an hour early today. I'm letting you off. You'll have time for the pharmacy and to be with your daughter. Valerie can manage alone. Sarah smiled brightly in response and expressed her gratitude. Val, of course, heard everything. As soon as David left, she immediately rushed over to Sarah. Look at you. Soon you won't have to work at all. The boss must be paying you just for your pretty eyes. Val, here we go again. What nonsense are you talking? He's just treating me like a human being. That's all. I'm very grateful to him. Thanks to him, I believed again that there are good people in the world. But Valerie squinted and snorted. Oh yes, definitely not without good reason. But there's always an ulterior motive behind such kindness. He's clearly hoping for something more than just your gratitude. Hasn't he hinted yet how you should thank him for his generosity? Don't worry. He'll start soon. You'll see. I know the score in this game. I've seen it all. As soon as a man does something for a woman, expect feedback. I don't think I need to explain what kind of gratitude we're talking about. The bed, Sarah, it all comes down to the bed. Men always have one thing on their mind. Let me give you some advice. Don't play hard to get when he suggests getting closer. Be affectionate, show him care, give him attention, and you'll live the good life. Who knows? Maybe you won't even have to work, and he'll help you out and raise your daughter. Sarah almost choked with indignation. Color flooded her face as she pictured the scene Valerie had painted. She glanced around anxiously, fearing someone might overhear them, then whispered, "What nonsense are you talking, Val? You've completely lost your mind. David is not capable of such a thing. He's married, and he's like a father to me. You wouldn't understand. I don't want to discuss this. If you bring up this topic again, I'll stop talking to you altogether." Valerie snorted contemptuously and walked away, and Sarah couldn't recover for a long time. Could her colleague's words possibly be true? The thought that David might be hinting at intimacy made Sarah shudder. Not because he was unpleasant, but because she saw him as a mentor, a friend, almost a father, but certainly not a potential lover. Sarah left work an hour early. On the way to the pharmacy, her thoughts involuntarily returned to her ex-husband. Because of him, she hadn't waited for Mark to return from the army. Tom had charmed her instantly. They met at a party and were inseparable from then on. The wedding was 2 months later. Sarah still suffered from guilt for not even bothering to tell Mark about the wedding in person. She just wrote a letter and left with her husband. Only the family idyll didn't last long. The first 5 years, yes, they lived in harmony. But after her pregnancy, which happened 5 years in, Tom changed. Pregnancy seemed to disgust him. He constantly teased her, avoided touching her, offered no support. The pregnancy was difficult, with terrible morning sickness, but Tom remained indifferent. The birth of the child only made things worse. He had dreamed of a son, but a daughter was born, and he constantly blamed Sarah for it. While Sarah was on maternity leave, he criticized her for everything and didn't help with anything. He spent weekends with friends until morning. Sarah suspected other women, but she remained silent. Sarah came back from maternity leave, but couldn't work. Alice was constantly sick, and she had to quit. Her husband's abuse became unbearable, and 6 months later, he left her. Or rather, kicked her out. The apartment belonged to him. "I don't need you anymore. And your sick daughter either. Pack your things and get out to your mother's. There's no place for you here. I'm filing for divorce and getting married soon. I found someone else? You're complete opposite. She's beautiful and cheerful, and you're like a squeezed lemon." Sarah and her daughter returned to her hometown. This marriage left a deep scar on her soul. She lost her former lightheartedness. She turned into an exhausted, nervous woman whose only goal was to provide everything necessary for her child. It was good that she had somewhere to go, to her mother's. Otherwise, they simply wouldn't have survived. Sarah surfaced from her memories, finding herself outside the pharmacy. After buying the medicine, she headed home. The next morning at work, unexpected news awaited them. David was going to Moscow with his wife for her health, and he was leaving the store to his son-in-law. "He has a daughter? I didn't know. Why did he never mention it?" Sarah whispered to Valerie. "Quiet? I thought you knew. She's been gone for a long time. Died very young, at 25. Cancer, something with her brain, I think. They say she suffered terribly, screamed in pain, a nightmare. And her husband didn't leave her side until the very end. Although there were rumors that he married her for money. Supposedly he loved someone else, but she left him. Rumors, of course. Who knows where the truth is? But after his daughter's death, David maintained a warm relationship with his son-in-law, and now he'll be running the store. I wonder what kind of guy he is. What can we expect from him? Maybe he'll let me sell my pies too? Val giggled maliciously. The next day, David brought his son-in-law to show him the ropes. As they approached the counter to introduce themselves, Sarah felt the world swim before her eyes. It was as if she had been thrown up and dropped sharply. She froze, holding her breath, her heart pounding wildly, ready to burst from her chest. Standing before her was Mark, the same Mark she hadn't waited for from the army. It was him. Surprisingly, he had barely changed. But Sarah was completely different. So much so that he didn't recognize her. His gaze swept over her, expressing nothing. He smiled politely at everyone, making it clear that working with him would be easy if they followed the rules. But his eyes didn't linger on Sarah. David went to brief Mark on the business, and Sarah spent the entire day on edge, flinching at every sound of his voice. Then David and Mark left. Sarah felt heavy-hearted and awkward. Now she would have to see Mark every day. What if he did recognize her after all? Or conversely, what if he remained a stranger, interacting only professionally? Sarah didn't know which was worse. But fate intervened differently that very evening. Her colleague left early, and Sarah was waiting for the security guard. He was late today. It was time to lock up the store. Sarah already held the keys when she heard the door slam shut. "The store is closed," Sarah called out, stepping from behind the counter. And then she froze, unsure how to react. Mark stood before her. He was looking directly at her, his gaze inscrutable, but then he spoke. "Hello, Sarah." "Hello again." "So you recognize me? I thought I changed completely." Mark shook his head. "No, that's just how it seems to you." Silence hung in the air. Sarah was speechless. And then she realized it was now or never. "Mark, I'm sorry for that awful thing I did. You can be sure I paid dearly for it, and I probably will for the rest of my life. You know, we were too young. I realized that later. At first, I was angry. I even hated you. But over time, I understood that I expected too much from you. Perhaps that's what pushed you away. I just needed to love, but I only demanded. You met someone who just loved, demanding nothing in return, only giving. And I made a mistake." Sarah lowered her head. "He was a monster. He broke me. I thought I deserved it. For what I did to you. It was retribution," she whispered. Mark wanted to add something, but her phone rang. "Yes? What? I'm coming." Sarah burst into tears. "What happened?" Mark supported her by the shoulders. "Alice, my daughter. She can't breathe. I need to get home immediately." Mark quickly locked the store. He drove Sarah home in his car. Alice was having a terrible coughing fit. She couldn't get enough air. She was suffocating. Mark drove them to the hospital. He burst in himself and started directing the doctors. Everything happened so fast that Alice received help, and the danger passed. When the doctor came out and said the girl would be kept under observation for 24 hours, but her life wasn't in danger, Sarah couldn't hold back and cried. Mark hugged her tightly and whispered, "Everything will be all right." It turned out Alice was having a severe allergic reaction. Sarah had been treating a regular cough, not suspecting the real reason. Mark didn't leave Sarah's side. A couple of days later, he brought in a specialist from another city. The doctor examined Alice and ordered tests. Mark paid for everything. The results were sent to the doctor, who prescribed effective treatment. For the first time in years, Alice stopped suffering from coughing. The treatment was long and expensive. She might have to take medication constantly, although the doctor didn't rule out that Alice might grow out of the condition with age. The main thing was that they found the root of her health problems. Sarah was on cloud nine. Alice was transformed. She was no longer constantly sick. She became cheerful, like any healthy child. And all thanks to Mark. 2 months passed. Mark and Sarah communicated rarely, mostly about Alice's health. As soon as Alice started getting better, Mark's calls stopped. Soon David returned with his wife. She had been treated, although she required long rehabilitation. But those were pleasant worries. The owner was back in his place and Mark seemed to vanish. Sarah felt a pang of longing. Her heart was heavy. She realized she felt not just gratitude towards Mark, but something much stronger. And then, 2 weeks after the owner's return, Mark appeared at her home. On a weekend, he came with a bouquet, a huge box of chocolates, and a bag of sweets for Alice. The girl immediately dragged the bag into her room. Sarah's mother wisely retreated to the living room, leaving them in the kitchen. And Mark confessed that he could no longer hide his feelings. He had loved Sarah all this time, and that love hadn't gone away. He had married David's daughter, trying to forget her, but it hadn't helped. His feelings flared up with new intensity and gave him no peace. He realized that if he didn't tell her everything, he would never forgive himself. "I love you more than ever. I don't want to hide it anymore." Sarah simply hugged him back without saying a word. 6 months passed. Mark and Sarah got married, and he took her and Alice to live with him. Sarah no longer worked at the store and had left her job altogether. Mark earned well and didn't want his wife to overwork herself. Sarah dedicated herself to her home, herself, her daughter, and her husband. David was genuinely happy. He treated Sarah like a daughter and Mark like a son. They maintained excellent relations with him. Sarah was transformed. There was no trace left of her former weariness and insecurity. She blossomed. Mark's love brought her back to life, and she was happy that everything had turned out this way. Perhaps to find true happiness, they had to go through mistakes. Only by enduring all of it could they truly appreciate the value of love.